Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave. I did something. I did. And I want to tell you about it and share my thoughts with you, give you some ideas and some things to consider. And if you're new here, welcome. First of all, great to have you here. This is the How to Podcast series. My name is Dave. I live in Ontario, Canada, near Niagara Falls. You know that big hill with lots of water? Yeah, that's where I live. And I love podcasting, and I love helping podcasters just like you to navigate the interesting and sometimes confusing world of podcasting by doing a show for you where we can chat about all things podcasting and learn from each other through our meetups that we do on a regular basis, as well as the content we provide here, bringing on amazing guest co-hosts, some of the nicest people and best and most talented podcasters in the entire world, right? Yeah, you know who you are. We love our guest co-hosts. They're amazing. And the big idea behind guest co-hosts, just a little side note, is, you know what? As a podcaster, I know everything that I know about podcasting, and I don't know anything about what I don't know about podcasting. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. I only know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. And bringing on amazing guest co-hosts, I get to learn. I get to grow. I get to experience podcasting through someone else's context, what they're doing and how they're growing. And I get to learn just alongside you as you listen. So the one thing we don't need is one person who spouts all the information. There's a lot of podcasts like that out there, and I wanted this one to be different. So you press play. There's a reason you're here, so let's get to the reason why we're here today to talk about moving your podcast to a new podcast host. I have 4 things to consider when it's time to move your show. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I moved, and here we go. So I started one of my shows on Spotify for Podcasters. I also started 2 of my other shows on Buzzsprout. And recently I moved all 3 of these shows that I'm mentioning right now to a new host. And in the process, I went through all the steps to make sure that everything moved over so that my audience was not impacted by my decision to move from one host to another. And you can do this. It's pretty straightforward. If you're nervous, we can do this together, and I can show you on Zoom screen share where we can actually look at your settings and I can walk you through this. The big thing is you don't want to make a mistake here because, again, it could impact your listeners. There could be some things that is going to cause you a little bit of grief if you do it the wrong way. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. So if you need help, howtopodcast.ca. I'd love to help you. Always free. Just reach out to me. Let's have a conversation and help you move if it's time to move. Now, the first show on Spotify for Podcasters, it's a free host. So, Dave, why would you move from a free host to a paid host in this situation? Well, I wanted to try a new platform that I have never been on before. I fell in love with the creator of the platform by listening to his podcast and thought, you know what? If I'm going to help more podcasters, I need to know more than just the hosting sites that I'm using currently myself. I need to expand so that I can give a well-rounded opinion of other hosting sites. There are some hosting sites that I'm probably never going to be set up on. For some reason, they just don't click with me as a podcaster. I know people who love those sites. Great. Awesome. I will send you to them if you have a question. But for me, some of these sites just don't work for me in my podcast. So I don't think I'll ever be there. But this one really caught my eye. And it's Captivate.fm. And spoiler alert, in the show notes, I actually have a link. And someone's already used this link already, which is great because I've only had it for a short time. But it's a way for you to check out Captivate. And I do get a small amount of money comes back to me because it's called an affiliate link. So it doesn't charge you more. It doesn't cost you more to use my link. But if you do use my link, it does help support the show. And what I do is I reinvest that money into fellow podcasters. through my Buy Me a Coffee, through other things where I can help other podcasters. I take the money that comes into the show and reinvest it in other podcasters. I actually just kind of give it away because I want other podcasters to find the joy of making money with their podcast. Even if they have like 2 listeners, you can still make money, and I can help you with that. But I want to reinvest in podcasters. So that's one of the things I do. I take the money that comes through my affiliate links, like the one in the show notes for Captivate.fm, and I reinvest it into podcasters. That's what I do because I just want more podcasters to be in the space. So that's what I do. So if you use my link, I will be able to collect a small amount of money for you using the link. Thank you for using the link if you want to try Captivate.fm. If you're a new podcaster and you haven't even started yet, you can sign up with them through my link and off you go. You get, I believe, 7 days free where you can go in, kick the tires, try everything, push all the buttons. And what's beautiful is they don't hide stuff from you, not like other hosting sites where they only give you like a small window to see what you can do there. They let you do it all. They are great. And their team is amazing. Their support team is awesome because I had questions and I'm going to share those questions and answers with you here. So it's a great move for if you're a new podcaster. And like me, if you already have your podcast with someone else and you're like, I'm not really having a great experience, or I'm not getting the support that I want, or I just want to know, I want something a little bit better. I want to move up. Then in regards to moving from Spotify for podcasters to Captivate, I've already seen some great things that have happened for my show in just a short time that I've been with Captivate. So again, link in the show notes for my affiliate link. Again, I will earn a small commission for you using my link to go to Captivate, but I get 7 days free. Go check them out. They're great people, and they really invest in podcasters. That's what brought me there. That's what brought me to the dance and got me out onto the dance floor. Was a great podcaster, a great podcasting host, and great tools for podcasters. It's fun. So I'll do more on Captivate.fm in a future episode to tell you more about my experiences with the new platform that I'm using so that you understand and you can make a decision that's best for you. Right? Again, no rules in podcasting. Do whatever you like. But here's some ideas. So I wanted to go through 4 different things to consider when it's time to move your podcast. Things that you should know up front, make note of, and make sure that you cross these off your list when you go ahead and move to a new host. Okay? You ready? All right, here we go. So we're moving on up to the east side to a deluxe apartment in the sky. Moving on up. Yeah, okay, that's a TV show. Yeah, okay, I'm old. All right, yeah, I like that one though. Anyways, we're moving our show. We're getting to another podcast host. We're moving everything, packing up the boxes, make sure we wrap all of the breakables so that nothing gets smashed. There's probably going to be pizza once we get there. And we're all going to have sore backs by the time we're done unloading this truck called a podcast as we move hosts from host A to host B. So 4 things to consider. And a bonus tip at the end, something that I came across that made my new hosts scratch their head and do some research. So I'm going to save you a little bit of confusion possibly and answer a question for you that I posed in the process of moving, and it could help you in your journey as well. That's a bonus tip. So technically 5, but we're going to focus on 4. The first thing when you're doing your move from your current podcast host to a new podcast host is that you do not want to kill your current podcasting host feed before you make a move. So where you've been hosting your podcast in the past, where you're moving from, do not stop that hosting site in the process of moving. That is super important. And here's why. So if you have been with a host for a while and you've been uploading podcasts and working through it and it's been going well or maybe not so well, and hence the reason why you're moving, you have a library of content. You have listeners, you have stats, you have connection with your audience, Your podcast is on all the players like Apple and Spotify and Audible and on and on and on it goes. So you have a listening community that has access to your information in your podcast. You don't want to break that relationship in the move. So make sure that if you're using a paid host today and you're moving to another host, that you continue paying for that host in the transition period. Don't cut that relationship off, because in some cases, depending on the hosting site, once you stop paying for the hosting fees for that hosting site in the move from host A to host B, you potentially, depending on how all the fine print works for that hosting site, the moment you stop paying for your podcast, it's a danger that you might lose the connection with your audience. So, in the move. So if you're going to move in April and it's March, keep your payments going through for a paid hosting site that you're moving from in the transition through April, for example, and then into May. Make sure everything's working before you make that final cancellation on your credit card bill. Just keep that in mind, okay? You want to keep everything flowing, everything working. That's one thing to keep in mind. Don't kill your current podcast feed in the transition between moving from podcast host A to podcast host B. Just keep it alive. Keep it running. It works. Don't mess with anything that's working. Just let it be as you make all these changes happen in the background. So that's number one. Number two is to stop posting to your old feed. So if you have, say, 10 episodes, and that's on your old podcasting host, that's your feed that you're moving from to a new place. You see those 10 episodes. When you go to record episode 11, as you've set up your new hosting site where you're going to be moving and migrating your podcast from one place to the next, once that's all set up, you want to post episode 11 not on your old feed where you would be posting in the past, but you want to post it to your new feed as everything is all set up. That way, when that episode goes live, you'll be able to track that your podcast episode, your new episode 11, is showing up in all of the places where you currently are being listened to. So that's really important. If you continue to post to your old hosting site the way you used to and where you used to post, it's going to be hard to measure to make sure everything's working the way you want to. So what I did for my podcast episodes, it was the podcast editing and support show that I moved from Spotify for podcasters over to Captivate.fm. When I moved it, I stopped promoting or stopped posting to my old hosting site, Spotify, and I posted my new episode to Captivate. And then once it went live on Captivate, I was able to go into all my apps and make sure that everything was working properly. I could see my new episode on all the players, on Apple, Spotify, Audible, AfroPods, JioSaavn, Ghana, all of them. Everywhere. I could see my new episode showing up. That tells me that that connection is good, that my new episode has continued to go out in addition to all the other episodes that migrate over in the change from podcast host A to podcast host B. I can see all 10 episodes from the past, and my new 11th episode is there as well. That's a great indication that everything went smoothly, and it all works. So that's a good sign. If I post my newest episode to my new host, and it doesn't show up on all the players like it did in the past on my old host, then I need to do some investigation. But for me, and for the tools that are out there and the way you can migrate from host to host, it's pretty straightforward now. There's always some anomalies. Yes, I get it. I see your hand in the back. There's always some anomalies, but for the most part, there's great support teams out there that help you in the process. So keep it in mind that you just want to see your newest episode show up on all the players. In the meantime, while you're in between podcast host A and podcast host B. Keep that in mind. The third thing to consider in the move is to go into your old podcast host where you're leaving and collect all your data, all your stats, all your information. grab all that information, put it in a box, and ship it off to your new host, because you're going to want to keep that information. That's really important. Collect your data. Before you leave, get all your information. So when you moved out of your college or university dorm onto bigger and better things, you got all these cardboard boxes, and they could be boxes from the local grocery store, or they had words on them and whatever, but you'd throw everything in there, get out a black marker, and you'd write on there, contents of the desk, clothes, breakable, fragile, fragile if you're Italian. And you'd write all these things on the boxes, so you labeled your boxes so you knew what the contents were in the box. You'd tape them. You'd tape gun out, and you'd tape the boxes shut, and off you go, right? You move out. You leave everything behind. You check under the mattress. You check in every drawer, on top of the credenza, way up on top. You have to get up there and make sure nothing's up there. You check every corner, making sure that you didn't leave anything behind. Same thing happens when you move your podcast. You want to make sure that you have everything. You want to make sure they have all your data. You want to have screenshots. That's a really great thing to do, is just go in and take a picture of what you see on your screen. That's great, because you see all your graphs, see all your stats, but then you can also go in and download the actual information from your podcast host that you're moving from. So you're going to want to get, for example, your listener data as far as where they're listening in the world, countries, cities. That's very important. What they're listening on. What apps are they listening on? Your podcast host will most likely give you information about, well, they listen on Apple, they listen on Android, they listen on a computer, they listen on a smartphone. That kind of information is very interesting as well, something you want to have. And then the episode data. So say, go back to my example before, I had 10 episodes on Spotify, and then I moved to Captivate. So I wanted the information on all 10 episodes as of the time of moving, so that I knew that episode 1 had this many listeners, episode 2 had this many listeners. I also knew how many listeners were listening, where they were in the world, episode by episode. I want to grab all that data, and I want to bring it with me. And Captivate has a great way for you to upload that as legacy analytics. And they have a disclaimer saying that because I'm bringing data to Captivate, they don't have any way to verify that data, that it is accurate to the standards they have on Captivate, which I appreciate. So they give you this little disclaimer saying these are archived legacy data. So this is just information for you if you want to access it and it's important to you. It's a snapshot in time. They can't verify the numbers you're bringing to them, so keep that in mind. But it is a great way to bring it over. You won't necessarily see the data in your analytics once you've moved. So, for example, episode 10, say, had 100 listens before I moved from Spotify to Captivate. Once I move to Captivate, episode 10 starts at 0 listens on my dashboard, because no one on Captivate through Captivate has heard my episode yet. But I do have the data that says 100 people listened to my show before I moved. That would show up in my legacy information, my legacy data. And then as new people begin to interact with me after I've moved to Captivate, then episode 10 will start showing a 1 listen, 2 listen, 5, 10, 20. It's going to start growing, but it's going to be the combination of the new data that shows up in Captivate's analytics, now that I've moved, compared to and added to the information in my legacy data. I have to do math, basically, and put those two numbers together, and that's my total listenership for episode 10, for example. So just keep that in mind. You want to bring that data over, and Captivate makes it super easy to capture that data and have that on your dashboard. But you're going to have to do some math and pull them together. Just keep that in mind. So collect your data. Go in, grab all the information, especially if you're moving from a paid host to Captivate, for example. Another paid host. Because again, once you stop paying for your old paid hosting plan, they have no reason to keep the relationship alive. You're kind of breaking up with them in that moment. So, breakups can be fun. So that you might not have access to the data that you see currently So grab it, pack it up, box it up, label it. This is the listener data for where they listen. This is the listener data for what they listen on. This is my information per episode data. All that can be downloaded from your current hosting site. Again, if you have questions, howtopodcast.ca. I'd love to help you walk through that. Lastly, in our step 4 things to consider is to post a new episode on your new host. We kind of talked a little bit about it, but I want to make sure we make this clear. Post a new episode on your new hosting site where you're moving to make sure everything works. So again, we kind of chatted about this briefly as we kind of went through this, but it's really interesting and really important to make sure that everything's working, right? So one of the tools that I use to verify that podcasts are working is pod.link, pod.link. It's free, doesn't cost anything. I don't make any money for you using pod.link because it's free, everyone. And what you do is you search up the name of your podcast. This is based all on RSS. Okay, remember we talked about this. That's that really simple syndication. That's how your podcast automatically goes out when you go to a hosting site and you submit your podcast to the hosting site. It goes out to Apple, Spotify. It just happens automatically through an RSS feed, basically a web address, a storage folder, a filing cabinet where you put your files, your podcast goes out into the world. If you need more help with that, let me know. Post a new episode to your new hosting site. You can future date it out a little bit if you want. You can make it live right away. So I posted episode 11 of my podcast editing and support show. And I posted it not on my old site, not on Spotify, where my other 10 episodes were, but on Captivate. And when it went live, I gave it a few days just to make sure. And then I went in to pod.link and I looked at my list of episodes. And lo and behold, there it was, sitting there right on top, episode 11 of the podcast editing and support show was right there waiting for me. And which is great because that means to me that everything's working properly. So that's a great way to double check, triple check, and make sure everything's working properly is to post a new episode. Again, not on the place you're moving from, but place your new episode on the place you're going to. And if you want to try Captivate, you can try it for 7 days and even post your new episode. Do all that in the first 7 days for free on Captivate and kick the tires on it. So that's kind of how that works. So what I encourage you to do is create that episode. It could be a bonus episode. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged 45-minute, 1-hour episode. You do a 5-minute episode and just give everybody an update. Tell everybody what's coming up on the podcast or something. Send them back into your catalog and listen to an old episode. And that way you know that everything's working. Okay? If you don't see that, reach out to the support on where you're moving to and explain to them that you released a new episode and you don't see it in your feed, and they'll jump in. They're amazing. Captivate team, outstanding. They were with me the entire way. Okay, so you want to make sure, again, the 4 things, don't kill your current feed before you make the move or during the transition. Let it sit. Make sure everything's working before you make anything. Before you stop paying for your hosting fee, before you do anything drastic, do not sever that relationship in the process of moving from one place to the next. That was number 1. Number 2, stop posting to the old feed. That way you know this is pre-move and this is post-move because all that's history and anything new would be your current updated podcasts. And as well, collect your data. Make sure you grab everything before you leave. Grab screenshots, grab all the data, download the CSV files, which is like an Excel sheet, basically, of all your data. You want to grab everything you can before you go. Check under the bed. Make sure you got everything you need before you sever that relationship. Really important. And then lastly, to post your next new episode on that new hosting site will allow you to see the transitions working properly. So those are some things that I've been working through. Now the bonus tip, here's the bonus round for all you great listeners that made it to the end of the episode. You deserve this. Here's one little thing that I came across that you should consider as you move your podcasts from one host to the next. So you deserve a bonus. You stayed to the end. Congratulations. And thank you for telling all of the apps that you listen to this podcast on that this podcast has value, because you're staying to the end. It really does mean a lot. And it does signal the apps that, hey, when I send people to Dave's podcast, they hang out to the end. We're going to send more people to Dave's podcast. It's a great way to get your podcast to grow, to be shown to more people. I would say even better than ratings and reviews, to be quite honest, because that can be gamified and fake. So listening to the end of the podcast, hard to fake, and you're here to, and that proves my point. So thank you for doing that. So the bonus tip, and this is where I had to reach out to Captivate in the process and ask a question which caused them to go, interesting. So here's what happened. I've connected all my podcasts through the YouTube integration, where every time I post an episode, it goes to Apple, goes to Spotify, on and on. But it also automatically goes as an audio only episode to YouTube, showing up on YouTube Music. I love it. It's a great connection. One-time setup. I'm done. I don't have to worry about it. And you can find the episodes over on YouTube. A great place to be found. Again, it's not when I look at my stats, it's not a traditional YouTube video. My drop-off is sometimes pretty sad. And I don't have a lot of people who subscribe to my podcast on YouTube. But I'm using it as a backup. I'm using it as a legacy, where no matter what happens to my podcast lives on YouTube as a backup storage drive, air quotes, so that it just lives somewhere other than my computer. So I love it as just a storage drive that you can listen to. You can listen to the episode, and I don't have to pay to have it backed up. So that's why I use it, and that's why I encourage it as just a backup drive. Really, for that, just even for that sake alone, it's a great way to do that. So think about this. Let's go back. Originally, I had my podcast editing and support show created on Spotify for podcasters and then connected to YouTube. All those things work. Everything works great. Super. Now I've broken that connection and I've moved to Captivate. So what happens is I get a redirect. So all my hosting sites and all of the places that would come to my Spotify for podcasters, they see, oh, Dave's moved. There's a change of address card. And I'm here, I'm now over there. So all the apps know, oh, well, we'll go over there now because Dave's over here. Right? All the steps we talked about, the 4 things we've already spoken about. So in that process, I've connected to YouTube as well. YouTube is looking at, when I look at my dashboard on YouTube, it's still looking at Spotify. So I reached out to Captivate and said, do I need to redirect my link from YouTube that used to look at Spotify? Do I have to now point it to look at Captivate? Because I have a new location where my podcast is. And they didn't know at the beginning. And I went through all of their information on their website, all their help documents and other questions. And I didn't see anybody asking this question. So I felt like I needed to, for my own sake, and then also to help you. And Captivate, in true Captivate fashion, responded super fast. And even though they didn't have the answer up front, they reached out to YouTube continually until YouTube finally answered. And they came back with a response, which is great. And in the meantime, going back to what I said about publishing an episode on your new host, a new episode there to make sure everything's working, it worked. When I posted my new episode, it went to all my apps, to Apple, Spotify, on and on. And it also showed up on YouTube with me connecting to Captivate. It just automatically happened. And so I sent them a screenshot, showed them that it works. Everything works. And they were still getting the answer back from YouTube. So that's interesting. So everything did work. I'm happy with that. But they did come back and clarify. And this is what I got from Danny. And they're going to update all their information on Captivate. So I'm sure you'll see updates about this. It says, hi, Dave, Danny here again. So I heard back from YouTube, and this is what they advise. If the feed we're redirected to has the same GUID, it's a nerd term, as the original feed, then everything will work smoothly. If the new feed at the end of the redirect chain has different GUID, then we'll treat all those episodes as new and upload them to the podcast on YouTube. And then Danny says, I confirmed with our tech team and we maintain the GUID, and this was confirmed, so you should be good with the shows continuing to be pulled. And it gave me a little smiley face because Danny is awesome. So in non-nerd terms, because you're like, what the heck is a GUID? Is that something from Star Wars? No, it's not. So basically, the connection works. Everything is fine. It's been double-checked, triple-checked. Danny and his team at Captivate make sure it works. YouTube says it works. Everything is the same and everything works. So happily, I can tell you that when you redirect your feed from one host to the next, you follow the 4 steps I mentioned, and you work with great support teams like you get at Captivate.fm, you can ask them their questions. They'll be there to help you. And as you release a new episode on your new host, during the transition, you want to make sure you check, am I in Apple? Did that episode 11 show up in Apple? Did it show up in Spotify? Did it show up on YouTube if I'm connected through YouTube and my RSS? You want to check everywhere your podcast is. And so for me, the easiest way to see that is using pod.link. Because when I use pod.link, I'll see my full episode list with my newest episode at the top. I'll see all the icons for where my podcast is available to be heard. And I can click through and I can check each of them just from there. And if I click on episode 11 in this example on pod.link as well, it will give me all the information just for podcast episode number 11 as well. So that's a little bit about it. In the transition, remember as well that you want to grab your stats ahead of time and then do the math, because you're going to have to new listens on your new host, old listens on your old host. And you're going to have to do the math together. I hope this helps. And again, if you're like, Dave, thanks for talking a lot, but I need help with this. Can we get together and do a Zoom screen share? And can we go through this? Can you show me exactly what we're talking about here? Yes. On my website, howtopodcast.ca, is my calendar link. And you can jump in there. You can get a free 30-minute chat with me anytime about anything. And it's there for you. And I do that on purpose because you matter. And I want to talk to you. I want to connect with you. And if I can help one podcaster on their journey and answer one question that's keeping you from moving forward, then that's why I'm here. Okay? So howtopodcast.ca. You can move. You can, if you need somebody to help you move, I'll come and help you. You supply the pizza. I'll come and help you move. No problem. Anytime when you want to move your podcast from one place to the next. And just remember to lift with your knees, everyone. And make sure you use bubble wrap around all your breakables, because I'm most likely going to drop something as we get to the truck. So howtopodcast.ca. If you need a mover, I can help. I love pizza. So let's get together and help you move. Howtopodcast.ca. And again, Danny and the team at Captivate, thank you so much for being amazing. You guys are awesome. I love Captivate.fm. And again, if you want to try it, affiliate link in the show notes. If you want to try it out, you can try for 7 days for free. And go meet them. They're just great people. I love them over there. Awesome. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon. Take care. Hey, thanks for being here on the How to Podcast series. Glad to have you on the show with us, listening in. I hope they're finding value in the podcast. I hope you're finding something that helps you with your show, helps you with the tools and the information from these amazing guest co-hosts through our daily Daves and these solo episodes. The variety of what we're doing here on the podcast is all designed for you so that you can get the tools you need to create your podcast, to keep going with your show. That's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm glad you're here finding value in this. If you would like to do a little bit more than just be a listener, if you want to do community with podcasters, we have a thing called our Meetup on meetup.com. You can come find us, and there'll be a link on our website at howtopodcast.ca, and you can come and join in on our Meetup. Instead of just being a listener, you could actually participate and come in and join other podcasters, just like you, at your stage, at your level, where you're at right now. And then other podcasters who are maybe a little further down the road, who can learn from you and you can learn from them. And we host these meetups on a regular basis. Again, go to howtopodcast.ca and you'll find all the information there. We'd love for you to come join us at our next meetup. The only thing we need at our next meetup is you. You're the only thing missing from all of this. So consider joining our meetups. Again, they're totally free on a regular basis, all through howtopodcast.ca. And I'd love to hear more from you about your podcast as well. There's a SpeakPipe link on howtopodcast.ca. Leave a message. I'd love to hear about you and your show and how we can work together to get your message into the world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for sharing the show with another podcaster that you're like, hey, I think you'd really like this episode. Go ahead, share the episode, and let's get more podcasters on the mic. Thanks for listening.